started. Will you please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Munson?
Andrew Benson. Here.
What timing? It's a gift.
Trina Binkowitz. Here. Doug Dave.
Here.
Joe Wetmore.
Here.
Ed Levine.
Here. Our first bit of information in our packet is the Lansing Community Library Report. And you're free to read this at your pace. Andrew, is there anything you want to comment on this as far as the library goes?
No, it's pretty detailed.
Excellent. We'll move on to our next, which is item number 5, Tompkins County Legislator Mike Stigler. Good to see you.
Nice to see you guys. I always think I'll have more time, you know, name's Steve. So hello, thank you for having me. Sorry I missed last month, I had another engagement, but as always, I do want to thank Marcia Lynch. She is the county's public information officer. She is also a Lansing resident, and I draw from her reports very literally. So, just a couple of road issues you may have noticed. The permanent speed signs are up on North Trip Hammer Road. You might remember this from a few years ago. I asked for a study at the county level to see what we could do, just because the road was getting kind of fast. The county did put up temporary signs, but now the permanent ones are up, and they've got the solar panels there and everything. Unfortunate news, the state DOT did reject my idea for a rumble strip over by the middle school that I was hoping would alert drivers that they were coming up to a school zone when they come down from the north. They have suggested a crossing guard. That's kind of in your guys' hands, so there's something to talk about. I'm talking to Ed a little bit about it. So, I mean, once the bridge is closed, I don't know if this is going to be that much of an issue for the next couple of years. So that's going to start relatively soon. So I don't know if that's going to be a problem. So we have some time, but I know that the county will be reaching out to you about that bridge closure and how it will affect the traffic patterns in town. I mean, frankly, the middle school is already awful with traffic. I don't know what that bridge closure is going to look like. So also with spring coming, I mean, we had the big melt yesterday. The falls were definitely going. I'm asking the county again to meet with Cricket, both the road department and planning. Some of the county roads are just in rough shape, and I thought Jeff from the county could ride along with Cricket and they could get a good handle on the situation. I just talked to him, Cricket, and he said, yeah, that's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. And it's just the weather's been rough, so it'll eventually happen. And then also I asked for planning to reach out to Cricket, just to talk to him about stormwater mitigation. I mean, he knows the roads, he knows the ditches better than anybody else in town. So I did ask the planning department to kind of do that. I mean, if you look at my own road, the ditches are really deep. I've contacted the state about it. I mean, I could stand in my ditch at this point, and you wouldn't see me. And right off Peruva Road there's an area that the farmer can't plow. It's just too wet all the time. I mean, there are cattails. It's a natural, I guess, wetland, or it's an unnatural wetland that's just become one. It would just seem if we diverted some of the water up Peruva into that wetland, you know, that would help downstream down to the ball field. So, onto the meeting stuff. The legislature did confirm Chair Michael Robertson's appointments to the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency for 2018. Approved with 4 members of the legislature. Rich John, he's going to be chair of the IDA. Robertson, she's going to be on the IDA. Leslie McBean Claiborne, and myself. So I've already reached out to the unions. I've met with TCAD. Wanted to get the unions' input on what they would like to see. I mean, I know moving forward, I would like to see a new direction for the IDA. It seems like we have put a lot of money into hotels and things like that, just to get kind of investment. I'd like to maybe move away from investment and do more when it comes to job creation. And I would like to foster a much closer working relationship with Cornell. It seems like they come out with a lot of inventions at the Cornell that if we could keep here, like Rosie, which is it's a way to order groceries online. It's based right in Ithaca. I mean, if we could foster more relationship with Cornell for that kind of spin-off technology, we could create more jobs here. And I really feel that's the role of the IDA, is job creation. So that's my goals there. 3 months after the departure of retired County Administrator Joe Marianne, the legislature, Chair Martha Robertson, said the legislature is pleased and proud to welcome new County Administrator Jason Molina to the county government. He's been meeting with all of us, definitely been going out in the community. He has 3 small children, so definitely will be involved. I think he bought a house over in Trumansburg. I tried to learn to Lansing. No housing over here. So, I will, just a little quick update on Joe. He is getting treatment for his illness, and it's looking pretty good. He's down in New Jersey for the next 7 weeks, so he's going to work on that. We did offer Molino a warm welcome. He did start his first week in office. He said he's meeting with the legislature and departments heads. He's already met with a lot of them. And he will also meet with others within the organization as well as those outside agencies. Good news on the sales tax report from County Finance Director Rick Schneider. He's reporting the county's share of receipts for the year 2017 at over $35 million. That is 6.2% above receipts for 2016, and it's more than $1.8 million above budget. So that is really nice, because that, going into the budget year this year, that should be able to help us keep the tax rate down. Last night we also authorized the transfer of funds from the mental health department to the sheriff's office budget, and it's going to fund a new position of the jail psychiatric position, and we transferred the mental health forensic program position from mental health to the sheriff's office. My concern with doing that transfer was who was going to have oversight of those people. I thought it probably should stay with mental health, but Frank Krupa did speak on this. You know, he told us the departments are adapting as they realize the reality of implementing these new programs, and he decided it did make more sense to have a model similar to that used for medical supervision in the jail. He's the expert at this, so I went with Frank on it. That's what he thinks should happen, so I thought that was probably the best idea. Lastly, we did authorize an extension for the county's agreement with Dr. Kenneth Clark, a special advisor to the Office of Human Rights, for as long as needed up until December 31st, 2018. That was an appropriation of $62,400 from the contingency fund. I mean, obviously, we still have issues with that department. We are trying to figure out what are the next steps with that department. And Dr. Clark is definitely doing his part to make that happen. So it was easier just to kind of go through the rest of the year. We don't know if it'll take the year, and if we don't spend through the end of the year, it just goes back to the general fund. So that's what we're doing. And that is it.
Does the board have any questions for Mike? I have a couple of comments. First of all, sales tax. We had about 70,000 increase over last year for us. There's about 15% for a B and about 85% for DB. That's how the breakdown is. So we're glad the extra 7,000 on that because of the 2.7. And from the indicators, hoping not to jinx us, is that it looks like 2018 is going to be a very good year. But the other thing is that at some point you may want to talk to our planner, Mike Long. He knows Jason.
Oh, very good.
Quite well. So you two may want to just have a quiet talk sometime and catch up. Okay.
Right. And since you brought up sales tax before too, I want to mention the mall is definitely on our radar. I talked with TCAT about it and the concerns over the mall. And I'm going to, we'll find out who the new owner is. It's obviously sold, what their plans are going forward, and what they're going to do with it. I mean, frankly.
Well, John's been working on it, hasn't he, John?
Yeah.
What?
John's been working on it, John O'Neill, as far as with the new owners and how they're going to do partial ownership and partial renting and that type of thing. So they're trying to, I guess, salvage as they can, because this is 2018 and those malls were good in their day, but now they're evolving. So John's working hard on that also, so he's another good person we want to have a chat
I
with.
will reach out to John then, because I mean, there's definitely people are putting in doctors' offices in some of them, and housing could be an option. I flew over the other day, and there's just a lot of space up there. So I always picture him flying
I
apart.
saw that.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next in our packet, we have our report from Steve Cole. Anything you want to add to this?
Just as we kicked off our basketball camp today, the holiday camp, we were hoping for 40 or 50 kids. We got here with 70, so that was a little hectic in the gyms today. We did walk them down to the middle school and split our squad a little bit. Everything else here is just up-to-date stuff for you. I will share with you that I see item 14, Corey Sill, the sort of the labor job share idea is dynamite. So far, so good with him, and I see him definitely being a benefit to cricket and his team as well. But so far, I think he's going to make our outside team this year really, he's going to be a really good addition to it. So
Good, thank you.
I think you're going to see you're going to discuss his resolution later.
Yeah, we'll give a little more background information then.
Yep.
Any questions for Steve? Looking over the supervisor's report, looks like you had a very busy January. I commend you on being so innovative with keeping the people at the community center for the campership when we had those cold days as opposed to in the vestibule. It sounds like that worked out really well.
Yeah, it was the humane thing to do, and the people really respected the place, and actually, they cleaned it when they left. It was the right thing to do. It played well. And I think, as our boat slips and things are coming in, I think Maureen did a deposit today. I think we did like $24,000 in less than a week. So it's starting to get, to that busy time of the year for us right now.
Excellent, great job by all of you. Move on to cricket and the highway superintendent report.
As you know me, not a lot, but a little. So the creek dredging probably will not take place this year. The lake was up, kind of last week. I kind of made that decision on it. They lowered it in anticipation of what we've got, over the next day or two coming, obviously. I don't know if you've been down there. The stream's still running a pretty good flow, so that, even though the lake level was down, and there seemed to be a little more showing, there's still a lot of velocity and stuff flowing there, so that would kind of hamper the project there too. And as we talked, as far as the cost of doing it, we want to make sure we do it right. When we do it the first time, the permit obviously is good through 2019, and we can renew as long as we're a couple months ahead on that. So looking to hopefully keep that renewed and open for 3 year at a time on that, just to hopefully get a better handle on maintenance of it every season. Outside of that, a little reprieve this week. Been doing some brush work and stuff, trying to get caught up on some odds and ends. Had a couple guys do a little renovation work for Mr. O'Neill up at the village there with their little community room they're trying to build there. So finally with the reprieve, got some things done there for them. Other than that, I guess I don't have a whole lot else, other than we're almost through winter, I guess. So.
Any questions for highway superintendent? A couple of commendations. First of all, it pertains to your department also, Steve, the fact that, once again, Patrick has his CDL license and he was busy working with the highway department. And talking to him today, as we do 2 or 3 times a week, we talk, whether it be Steve or Pat. You recommend I go down to the park today. I've never seen the water that low, where the actual dock, there is no water under it. It is absolutely amazing. If you have a chance, perhaps tomorrow, before we get all this stuff, if we're supposed to get any stuff, go down and look. It's, like I said, I've never, my 50-some years, I've never seen this, being down there. I've never seen this low. You can walk practically from the lighthouse almost over to the creek on the outside of where the dock is. It's absolutely phenomenal. So, anyways, thank you as always.
Well, there again, that was my frustration. It's like Pat says to me the other morning, he's like, "Did you see?" Right, but the problem is, it takes me about 7 or 8 days to get staged and set up for the dewatering and everything. So, the problem is, it's just too much of a gamble for the money it costs. I mean, atypical, we would try to get stuff set up and get this done like in January, and the winter just hasn't cooperated.
So, you made good judgments. I did drive over there and the water's still running.
Yeah, but great.
The guys are catching up on their sleep.
Yeah, they've been kind of spoiled this week, honestly.
Yeah.
They were grumpy with the forecast tomorrow.
They did a nice job hanging the lights in here.
Oh, great, thanks. Yep.
That's a big improvement.
Next on is Mike Long, and our planner.
Okay, well,
I
I see Connie's here, so I'll skip over the Ag Committee. Comprehensive plan, I did have a time to meet with Joe Whitmore, and we talked about putting together a presentation on the comp plan. Also met with Katrina a little bit about trying to develop an overall pathway system as part of the comp plan too. So I'll go on with the, on the second page, Cuca Farm, Cuca Orchard. There's a request for a ZBA variance for a sign. Basically, as you may recall, there's 102 apartments as part of this complex. So the tentative date is March 20th for the ZBA meeting. And then hopefully we'll come back to the planning board and get that as an amendment to the site plan approval. East Shore Circle, there's a 4-lot subdivision that was approved January 22nd, which is good. And then Verizon, 235 Conley Road, cell tower, was a modification to an existing project that was also approved on the 22nd of January. So the next meeting will be March 12th. The Lansing Rod and Gun Club are going to come and talk about reorienting their shooting range. As you probably know, the EPA is not too happy with the lead going into Salmon Creek, so they've asked them to rearrange it. They're under order to basically do that. They've been spent the last couple years really trying to allocate as to where and define exactly where the site would be. So they're trying to move things around. So hopefully we'll have that set up as a public hearing, and we'll have some comments from the public as well. So the computing center, 987 Warren Road. I just put on here as a future project where there was a project that was approved for office type use. That project did not go forward. There's a doctor who is interested in actually using that site, coming up with a slightly different revised plan, a little bit larger building for medical offices with some additional parking. So we're going to have a meeting on March the 7th to talk about that with the planning board chair and go through the initial concept. So there's still, I guess you could say, negotiations in terms of whether or not they're going to do that particular location. They've looked at some other sites as well, but I just wanted to make the town board aware of it. In that particular site, they have water and sewer already in that place, and it makes a lot of sense in terms of the town, so we're trying to encourage that development along Warren Road there. And we also had a meeting today. We anticipate an application for the Finger Lakes Marina to do some improvements there. Let's say that the person who owns the marina has been doing some work over the last several years. Added a few extra buildings that probably should have gone through a site plan review. So John Anderson is the engineer who's now trying to package that all up in terms of the DEC permits and where they've made some changes. So we've been working with him for the last couple of years trying to get him to put together a site plan. So we're optimistic that we should see something hopefully in the next month or two. Or it could be another couple of years again. We don't know for sure. But again, they've done some work over there. We're trying to get things cleaned up. There was some conversation with the water and sewer group as to whether they would like to have public water. There was some conversations about it a couple times, and today they've decided that they're going to keep it with a well system. So that's what I have for you. Do you have any other questions?
Thank you, Michael. Next one is our engineer's report. David Herrick has the flu. And so thank you, Dave, for not coming tonight. Because we're short on Tamiflu. So having said that, in his report, he does address consolidated water districts extensions 3, 4, and 5, and you can read about that if you still want to discuss it. If we have time in a work session, we can. But it pretty well gives a review of where we are with all 3 for right now. Isn't a lot of big movement on it, so we'll wait till next month and see what happens. Number 10, Ag Report. Connie?
Not a lot to report. We had our Ag Committee meeting on February 5th at Linda's Diner. Fred Hudson from the Farm Credit attended the meeting, along with Scott Doyle from Tompkins County Planning. Fred had spoken with one of our farmers in regards to PDRs. In this case means purchase development rights for the farmers, that so stays forever farming. There's been some problems in a few of the towns with the zoning ordinances. They've actually made problems where there weren't problems to begin with, and he knows that we're going to be reviewing our ordinances here soon and trying to put into place an agricultural zone. So he said you need to be very careful about how that is done. And this only adds to the need to adopt a comprehensive plan so the planning board can get started on updating the zoning ordinances. So, needless to say, the farmers are a little nervous about some of the stuff, so keep trying to reassure them that everything will be fine. So, I don't know what else to say about that, other than that was pretty much what the whole meeting was about, and there's some concern. So, as you know, the PDRs take quite a while, and I think Andra can let us know that or tell us about that process. It's a long process to go through, but in the end, it's actually it's a good thing in the end. But until we get our ag zone in place here, we're waiting. So. There are a couple of farmers that are interested in doing that, but they're apprehensive about it, let's put it that way. So yeah, but there's money available, and I think though that it's March 11th or something like that.
Around there.
That they have to be in. So I don't foresee anyone doing it this year. So. And our next meeting will be March 5th at 9 a.m. And that may be the last one for a while, depending on what the weather brings forth. So.
Great, thank you.
Let me add one more thing. We just heard late today, we had submitted a request into Cornell to their law school. They're looking for agriculture-related projects to work on. And so we had submitted that the ag plan may be something for them to give us some input on. It looks like they're going to use that as one of their projects. So,
Nice.
so we're going to dovetail the comprehensive plan, the ag plan, and trying to come up with some revised legislation that would be considered hopefully as part of the comprehensive plan implementation of the land use ordinance.
Because they're going to address the zoning ordinances and see where legally stands and stuff like that. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Yep. Any other questions? Comments or concerns? If not, we'll move on to privilege of the floor. No one signed the privilege of the floor?
No.
Okay. I guess we'll move on to the comprehensive plan comments. I would ask that if anybody who has made a comment, and we have it on file here, that we've already received your concerns, and I would like to address any or listen to any new comments, questions, or concerns from people in the audience.
No one signed up on that sheet either.
Okay.
That doesn't mean someone doesn't want to say something, but
Floor is open.
nobody signed up.
Floor is open. Everybody's coming late. Do you want to move on to the comprehensive plan discussion? That's something you want to discuss tonight. I know we discussed some of this on Monday with the planning board, but I'm open to discussion right now. If you want to share comments or concerns to get some of this stuff maybe, or do you want to do a separate working session to discuss it later?
I think that we had a great meeting with the planning board, and a lot of things were understood a little better from both sides, and I think need a little time, so maybe a separate meeting to talk about.
Yeah, as Mike said, we're working on a presentation for the public.
Yeah.
I'm thinking April's probably going to be, our April working meeting would be a good time to do that.
Do you still feel good about this?
I still feel good about it.
Okay,
I was
you.
hoping to do it in March, but there's just no way I can get it done.
I'm going to let the thoroughbred run the race, okay? So you give us a signal, okay?
Yeah, I want to get it done as quickly as possible, but I just
Understand.
can't get it done by March because, Mike and I need to work on it a little bit more.
So maybe we'll have a discussion afterwards.
Yeah,
Do it that way. I mean, I don't want to drag it on, but I don't want to shove either.
I'm okay with having some discussion about it at the March working meeting.
Sure.
Okay, good.
Pre-discussion.
I think it'll be good then because we'll be in a different venue. Also, the fact we'll have hopefully the sewer presentation. Hopefully, now I always say hopefully.
Right.
Yeah, I learned. So now hopefully we'll have the sewer presentation done with a map plan report by Tim Buell of that group. And I'd like to do that probably first. And I've always invited the village board also because they're a major player in all this and a major beneficiary, also a major contributor. So if we have that, if we're on schedule, we'll probably get that done first. Move right into the comp plan. And
I think it'd be good to, maybe we could, come to some understanding of if there are some changes we want to do. We could agree, really discuss it. And that would reflect in the information meeting. It might change what is being presented, who knows, right?
Yeah.
So.
One thing I did come away with this meeting, where there's there's a variety of different things I thought were successful. One of them is, and in hindsight, I would have done this differently, or I would have had input differently, to have the planning board at the first informational meeting and have them basically conduct it, like we did this one on Monday. Well, like I said, hindsight makes geniuses of us all. It's the foresight that's the tough part. But at least they had an opportunity to give their reason behind it. I thought that was important for respect out of them, because I feel very uncomfortable defending somebody else's decisions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And number two, I came away with, personally, a lot of those discussions we had pertaining to land uses. And personal opinion is those things can be hashed out in the next committee as we move forward. So some of these things that we can discuss in the near future, but if they're to do with land uses, those are things that maybe those committees, the next committee could work on, because I'm not throwing stones when what I'm about to say, because this could not have happened anyways. But when Michael put together that Myers Park grant, we found out that without the comp plan, we were very handicapped. And obviously we couldn't have gotten that done in time. But what it does is it brings to light the importance of getting this done before the next grant season. And when is that next grant season, do you think?
Well, I'd love to have the comprehensive plan done in June, at least. I mean, maybe May would be better. But again, I think we've got the next grant cycle to give us a competitive shot at it. We got, 95% of everything done, but the biggest missing link was the comp plan, having it adopted. And we lost a lot of points there.
So what that means with this grant, for more background information, is that grant was so that when you come into Myers Park, you have to go to the starboard side because there's so many rocks, or excuse me, on the port side, there's so many rocks on the starboard side, we have it flagged. Don't go on this side because the rocks are there. And what the intent is, part of this grant, is to basically reinforce that and dredge it, which we're in position to do, but we're waiting, I think, for the DEC. Well, am I correct?
T.G. Miller is doing the plans with Cricket to actually do the shoring and all the stabilization stuff that happens. I mean, Cricket, we had included some of the dredging as part of the match, and again, using in-kind labor and equipment materials from the highway department, we can use that as a match against the state money. And so hopefully we can get twice as much done because we're using their money instead of the town's.
Okay, so that's just part of what this thing's about.
So the bank on the inlet, that has to be stabilized before you could even dredge it, correct? Because it wouldn't hold the machinery for the dredging?
Right.
Okay, ABC, right.
So I know we've had enough discussion about, but we also understand in one way or the other the importance of moving this forward at a reasonable clip.
So if we can finish the comp plan in May, that'd be ideal.
So we can move on to the resolution hiring Corey Still as a laborer.
I'll move the resolution hiring Corey Still as a laborer in and for the town of Lansing and selecting probationary period therefore.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
I've already noticed how nice and clean and shiny the floors are.
So a little more background. When Patrick had to pinch hit and do this, amongst other things, and Cricket pinched hit also by cleaning bathrooms, Patrick was very sensitized how he wanted things done, and he did it by example. The other thing is that Corey now is aggressively looking for his Class D license. And when that happens, he also will be baptized under fire and plowing stone and loading and that type of thing. So once again, we have another person that can go out into the roads and plow, because even though we have 98, 99 miles of road, we are responsible in the winter for 140 miles of road, not 97, because we do a lot of the county roads. So we have a big workload on our crew, plus a couple of them had the plague, didn't they? For lack of a better term. Yeah, I knew. So this makes it all that important that Corey is the custodian slash rec slash highway laborer, jack of all trades. So it's supposed to be good. And I've heard nothing but great reviews about him. I also had a private talk with him that the reason he's full-time is because of the custodian. If that doesn't work out, there's no full-time. So, and evidently so far he understands that, so we'll hopefully keep moving forward. Any other comments?
I just want to make sure there's money in the budget for this.
There actually is, because he is going to get a stipend of if he gets his Class D license, but it'd be the same rate as the other gentleman that unfortunately didn't live up to our expectations.
Okay.
So it's basically just one goes out, one goes in. Do you have no discussion, Mrs. Munson?
Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Doug Dave,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
Yes.
Edward Levine.
Yes. Item number 15, resolution amending organization resolution 18-44 approving building permit fees. Someone would like to entertain a motion?
I will.
I'll move it. I'll second.
Any discussion? If not, Mrs. Munson?
Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Doug Dave,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
Yes.
Edward Levine.
Yes. Number 16, resolution amending organization resolution 18-20 appointing the workplace violent threat assess team.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Let me make a couple comments. Judge Banfield did some research, and he found that there would be a conflict of interest if he was still on the workplace violence. So we reached out to another employee of that same group, and Melody Lombardo said she would do it. And I'm going to use this opportunity to address everyone here on tape that we will not tolerate any derogatory statements, threatening statements to any of the board members or anybody else that we have public meetings at. If you have discussion, everyone is open to their own opinion. I would hope that if you have a disagreement, that you simply do not say anything, but you address it to the board. Everyone is entitled to their own viewpoint, and I respectfully want to hear everyone. So everyone has the same right to express their opinion to us. I don't want anything going back and forth. Not that we have, but I want to get out in front of this. So having said that, that behavior won't be tolerated. And we'll move forward in a positive direction because all your viewpoints are very important. Because in all fairness, there may be something I'm unaware of, and if I'm sensitized to it, I'll try my best to make sure that it's made better. So having said that, Mrs. Munson?
Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz.
Yes.
Doug Dave,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
Yes.
Edward Levine.
Yes. Resolution, item 17, resolution final order of formation of drainage district number 10 for Noble Lane subdivision. Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Can I get a little background on this, please?
Where's Michael?
I think he just stepped out.
Guy, you're up.
When somebody triggers stormwater review, they trigger several different potential levels of regulatory oversight, both by the town, basically funneled from the EPA to the DEC, and then downhill as a unfunded mandate, a term I know you're familiar with now, to the town. So one of the requirements of Phase 2 stormwater is that if somebody is going to have on-site permanent practices, ponds, swales, diversion trenches, whatever it is, that part of the SWIP plan, the stormwater plan, is a methodology in place that will guarantee the long-term operation, maintenance, and reporting on those facilities to make sure that when there's a 100-year storm event, someone's looking at them to make sure they're maintained, to make sure they're repaired as needed. So there's two principal ways of doing that. One is a stormwater agreement, which traditionally tends to be used for single owner projects or for smaller facilities. And the other way for subdivisions where you're going to end up with multiple owners and not necessarily people being of a common mind as to what's worth investing in is a drainage district. So when the town has to go in and do monitoring or pull the silt out of the forebay or the pond, that cost is paid by the properties that benefit from that stormwater control as opposed to having everyone else in the town pay for it. And that's basically what stormwater districts are. So they're set up subdivision by subdivision when you have multiple users, when it's a big enough facility to suggest that's the right way to go. The state Speedy's permit is part of the process. The notice of intent with the state and the stormwater officer, they're part of that too. So what this is just a system to guarantee that the stormwater continues to function into the foreseeable future.
Thank you.
What we have here with these drainage districts, this is 10 of them, we also have, as you know, light districts, sewer districts, whatever, they all are part of the tax cap calculation, which I totally disagree with. I mean, I think it should be just the A fund, that's your tax cap should be calculated on. We don't calculate on the B funds, which is only village, but we do for some reason on this, which is also only located in certain areas. So having said that, we go around every year, I meet with Cricket, and we do the analysis on the drainage districts. And 2 years ago, we had to add money to it. That's why we went over the tax cap. Last year, they did not add any money to it because they had enough to do it, to clean out the storm if they had to. So that's why we were under. So there we are. So every year, we methodically go through, and we do not tax people unnecessarily. And the question is, has anything been done? If nothing's been done, do you foresee anything being done this year? If the answer is no, then we have enough money, and we leave it alone. So there we are. So having said that,
Andrew Benson?
I want to make sure you're okay with that.
I'm okay, thank you.
All right.
Andrew Benson?
Yes.
Katrina Binkowitz?
Yes.
Doug Dave?
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore? he's gonna do reports, so.
Before we get to that, Ed, I'd just like to talk about mics and people hearing us, because I talked to the audience members again, and what happens is, we lean back and relax, and we talk, and the mic doesn't work. And I'm wondering if we can get clip-ons, because I'm repeatedly hearing that the audience can't hear us, and you know, I know how easy it is to sit back, relax, and I can hear everybody on this column really easily, and apparently that doesn't work for the audience.
Well, our heads,
And we
And we
turn.
turn.
We
Yeah,
turn,
we
we
don't do
face
this.
each other, we don't
Yeah.
face the audience, and we've been told this over and over again,
And we still can't manage it.
and we still can't manage it. So I'm looking for a way of fixing it, because I think it's really important that we get heard, and, you know, I don't want audience people to feel like, you know, we're hiding something or something, so I would like to investigate figuring out a way to make us heard.
I would probably reach out to, Patrick and see, because he's our tech guy,
Yeah.
and see what the cost would be.
Mhm.
And if the cost is too high, then we'll just all lean forward, but it's something at least to pursue.
Can I point out that the school board uses clip-ons, and the board members don't use those right, and you can't hear them either. So.
How do you not use a clip-on so that people can't?
You know, I wouldn't have been able to tell you myself, but Chris could tell you.
They turn them on and turn them off.
Really?
well,
Because the batteries run out like on
so they
wireless
turn them
phones.
off if they're not speaking, and then we forget to turn them back on.
Different type.
Yeah.
Because the batteries run out so quickly?
Yeah.
It's the type of microphone. Different
Yeah.
microphones have different characteristics. What you need one is that measures an area of effect as opposed to one you have to talk
So,
into at a
like
really
this
close
here.
range.
Yeah.
Correct. They could actually make microphones and just suspend a couple right in front of this table, and it would be sufficient to amplify the whole room. The fancier you want it, the more it costs.
I think it's really important that we
Yeah.
make our discussion accessible, and, you know, I kind of angled myself this time, trying to make it so I could look at you and still have the mic, and I've been told it's not working that well. It's working a little better than people sitting back like this,
Right.
but even sitting like this,
It's
it's
not
not
that
working.
great.
And if it's not working doing this, these mics aren't, you know, none of us are going to sit like this through the entire meeting.
That's true.
Well, I think he can turn the gain of the mics up, but because of the grounding issue, well, you get his feedback at a certain point. So.
Right.
We need to do something different, because this, you know, if this normal conversation isn't being heard by the audience, we have a problem. And I'm just not going to talk like this, which clearly works, but we've tried it over and over again, we don't do this.
Which brings up the next point. How are we going to amplify our voices at the working meetings?
You have microphones for those?
No.
No. And they don't have microphones there, we're just gonna have to speak loudly. It's a small room.
Well, I mean, yeah, good question.
It's a small room, we're just gonna have to make a point to yell.
I think so.
Okay.
I can tell you the village hall is horrible in that way. It's like there's a divide between where the board sits, and I think it's because of the airflow coming from the hallway, which sort of splits that way in
Well,
half.
and the ceilings, how high?
Right, but it's, honestly, sometimes I have to put the earphone into my thing. I always put the mic in front of the mayor, who has a very soft voice. It's the only way I can hear anything.
Yeah, sometimes you just hope you read lips, because it's like, what do you say?
Yeah.
Well, it's just a good thing to keep in mind going forward.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we at least pursue it? Maybe there's been other technology since then, and maybe there's other stuff we can do to, maybe they have ones where they have a cord on them.
That's the other solution, is that you could purchase lavalier mics that plug in and replace what you'd be tethered to the course, but you know, the cord.
We're not.
I don't go that far.
Really, man? Really, man?
I'd say that's probably the best solution, then you're always going to have constant sound.
Yeah, and it'll cut out that side conversation.
So why don't I reach out to Patrick? Now I'm talking loud. Why don't we reach out to kind of like when you go to the dentist, all of a sudden you look at your teeth. Why don't I talk to Patrick tomorrow about this and see what the options are?
Thank you.
Okay, good. All right, let's go into the work session. The use of the accrued sick time. Once again, background information. This is something that for people that are hired after 2015, it doesn't apply. And what it is that, and maybe I'll ask Guy in a minute to give us some history, because this has been bounced back and forth a lot, you know. And he has a far more longer history here than I do, obviously. But the way it turns now is that when you retire, and usually the magic number is 85, which means 30 years and 55 years old. That's when you max out. People can work after that, they're allowed to, we don't push anybody out. But having said that, what you have here is that situation where if you have your sick time built up, you get 12 sick days a year. What you don't use gets put into a pot, so to speak, okay, a number, okay? And you maxed out at 1,320 hours. That's the most you can accrue over your career. You then take your hourly wage, and that is the amount of credit that you have. And the way it sits now is that you use an actuary table. Let's say for simple math, you're 55, the actuary table goes 20 years. They figure you last 20 years. So whatever that credit is, you get 1/20th every year towards your health insurance. But the way it turns out now, at age 65 it stops. So even though you may have 20 years, you only get 10 years of that credit. That's the way it stops now because Medicare kicks in. What the proposal is to say, okay, here's your credit. We will take that from the day you retire until the age you're 65, and how many months that is, we divide that, and per month, that's what you get towards your health insurance. That is what the proposal is. The other proposal is that right now we don't have, if you look at these numbers, 60% and 40% for family coverage and 40% coverage for employee, and then it was 75% for single and 25%. That is the 65 and older contribution that we help with for Medicare. We're trying to get that up to speed now, so it's currently at 15% for both family and single. We want to get that up so that the retirees are making more of a contribution. So that's being nudged up while this other is being nudged up. That is the other proposal. So there's two things going on here.
So I guess my first question is, what kind of liability do we have right now? What have we agreed that we're going to be paying out in the future? How big is that dollar amount? And how much would each of these change that total aggregate of what we've agreed we're going to pay out?
Well, let's see what's in the email. There was an email sent out, and we can obviously crank it out per, because at one time we want to get there within 4 years to those marks. And so it's bumped up about 6.5% each year. And the way it turned out, without those numbers off the top of my head, it was a large increase because the insurance also increased. Mm-hmm. And therefore, when we revisited this, and someone came to us and said, this is a hardship, this is a large amount, so the decision was to back off. Those exact numbers, I suppose we can have that discussion at our next meeting.
For me, it helps to see how much we actually owe right now, because we've been accruing this obligation over time, and it's building up, and I want to know what that is, what we've agreed to do now, and how big a change this is from what we've already agreed to. And I think that makes a bit of a difference in my looking at it.
Off the top of my head, one person who just retired, he will not pay any health insurance until 3 to 4 months left before he gets 65. Mm-hmm. There are two others that are paying, I believe, $65 more. Mm-hmm. And one is paying, I think, $427 more. That's the hardship one. Mm-hmm.
But aren't you more interested in how much the town has to pay?
That's what I'm saying. All right.
Not what the people have to pay.
I understand that.
Well, I want to know
part
about
of the
both.
equation.
No.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about. What's our obligation? We've already obligated ourselves to paying a certain amount towards these health insurance. And that's a lump sum number that we've built up over time. And as we have employees, it builds up more.
I think some of that went back to that accrued table, though. The calculation was made by giving, instead of stopping at 65, it's going to 75, whatever number that was. So that accrued table affected that total. So in the way it stands now, it's not working that way. Well, it is working that way, but that's the hardship.
I'm recognizing I might have gotten that sent to me 4 weeks ago, and I'm still trying to catch up with stuff, and so I might have missed something that's been sent to me, and I apologize if I lost it. I'm trying to figure this all out.
Right. My only thought there is, yeah, the calculated sick leave per employee is out there. I mean, it's not that hard to come up with. But that's the number we're talking about, right?
I want to see
That they're owed because they earned it.
I think what would be helpful is you have the specific numbers where we stand now, what the specific numbers are later, because you're gonna have a bunch of employees that are gonna be coming down the road here.
Mhm.
Now granted, the new hirees are gonna be at a lesser rate than these, so there is some, and if these other ones, perhaps that's the incentive for them to retire a little early. Okay, you accelerate that process also. Once again, up to them, but I have the attitude right now that I'll take as much time as necessary. And, you know, you had a lot on your plate this last month. So we can, once again, I'm not in a rush of anything anymore. Every board has a personality, and you have to work with each personality, and that's fine. And the other thing is that we have so much new stuff on our plate with comp plans, with revisiting the reserve policy, revisiting the procurement policy, revisiting the investment policy. All those things are all going to tie in together. They're all going to tie in together. So I'm in no rush. We'll try to get those numbers to you as fast as we can. If we have time to discuss at our next meeting so we can make an intelligent decision at our voting meeting, I'll call it our voting meeting, which is the third one, because I don't plan on doing any resolutions at our working meeting. Then we can do that, and we'll probably gear this for perhaps hopefully, a decision. In the meantime, you can always discuss back and forth or ask Charmaine if you need more to have perhaps at our third meeting in March on the 21st, we can perhaps pursue this more, perhaps even have a resolution by then. Or not.
I'm going to remain hesitant until I've had a chance to catch up with
Like I
things.
said, or not.
Yeah.
We've been going on this long.
I understand.
So, but it's something that was brought up to us, but I think we need to address this not only from the employee standpoint, but from the employer standpoint with the percents.
Yeah, I understand the worry that the employees have. Health insurance is a problem for everybody in this country, and the rates are going up at astronomical amounts, and that's hurting both the town and the employees, and I feel for the employees. I also have an obligation to understand what I'm agreeing for the town, because, you know, we're spending somebody else's money.
Totally agree. So we have an action plan for that, so perhaps we move on to our next item, which is the review of the procurement policy. And we discussed some of this in the emails, and I don't know how much of this is wiggle room and stuff is not. And I welcome any input that people want to make comments on right now.
Well, I mean, you know, there's no wiggle room on the 25 and 35,000, that's statutory, and I think that's pretty clear. It's what do we do underneath those limits. And my first question is, I'm looking on page 2. We've got a table of contracts between $1,000 and $20,000, and it says if it's under $1,000, there's one verbal quote that's gotten. If it's up to $2,400, we get 3 verbal quotes, and if it's higher than that, we get 3 written quotes. And how is this documented? Are we actually doing this?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
How is it documented?
So we do every year, the tough part in our situation, so the mechanic ties up a great deal of time at the beginning of each year, because as you can imagine, the whole array of things that we use, he goes through, gets all his quotes and stuff like that, so he has the last 2 or 3 years, but we actually do that every year. The stuff I do, fortunately for a lot of stuff I do, it's deal with county contract or OGS pricing, stuff like that, so that those people have technically done that work for us, so a lot of the bigger stuff where it would involve us, trying to really write, bigger specs and stuff like that, we've done spend a lot more on the other side. And again, for the 3 written quotes, a lot of the stuff, I certainly keep all that stuff that I do anything like that that's in that range.
I'm thinking of the smaller stuff, and I was looking over the vouchers, and you bought a battery for $20. Now, are you documenting a verbal quote on that battery and then going out and issuing a purchase order for it? Which seems like a lot of work on your part to document that that's the price you're paying for it. And I'm wondering how this procurement policy actually gets enacted on the smaller stuff, because I understand when you get to the bigger stuff, it makes sense.
Right. So like, in the aspect of the verbal quote, I mean, there again, our line of work, I mean, I'm a pretty fair judge of if the price is fair or it's not. But I mean, ideally, so if I call up, the battery, a verbal quote's $20. Well, they put the $20 on the receipt. If the verbal quote's 20 and then they try to charge you 30, well, we're not buying it. So I mean, to me, the verbal quote's, once the verbal quote's done and I sign off on the voucher and send it down for the audit, I mean, that's my verbal quote, basically. That's my documentation of it. So, because I mean, obviously, with all those little things like, if we need, a can of bee spray, or whatever for $4, I mean, it's just, I mean, you realize how crazy it could get to try to.
Right, and I'm thinking maybe there's a way of rewriting that section to describe more what you're doing and less of, something that would be expected to be documented. It says you're getting a verbal quote. I don't want you to have to fill out a form each time you spend $5 saying I got a verbal quote, it's $5, and so I'm looking at that and thinking, how can this be written practically and still protect the town and saying, go out and be prudent.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, that aspect side of it, I mean, like I said, I think the general thing's been for all the years that I've been around is the verbal quote fixture is basically verified by the receipt, you know what I mean, so.
Yeah, otherwise you have to document anytime you're gonna buy a pad of paper.
Yeah.
You have to make a note.
Right, I just like,
paper.
I just like to clarify what we're actually asking for in this policy so that we don't, set ourselves up for an audit and they're saying, well, can you verify that you got all these verbal quotes? Can you verify, now you're saying over $1,000, there's 3 or more verbal quotes. Well, how do we document that?
So we do document those.
How?
So noted on a piece of paper, wrote on a piece of paper, put in the file with the quotes, basically. But
So you say you call these 3 places and these are the 3 different quotes you got?
Correct. But even typically with that, Joe, like when the 3 verbals, hey, just fax it over to me in writing. So typically most of that stuff kind of falls more into the 3 written quotes. Because, I mean, if you're into that situation where there's that flexibility, I mean, unless it's something in the middle of the afternoon, it's kind of an emergency thing, you're trying to call places or whatever and figure out who's got it, and a lot of times the issues you run into, things like that, I mean, at the end of the day, based on, the comptroller is, I need 3 written quotes, the problem, a lot of guys I talk to that run into is, you'll call 2 places, get a response from them, you call 4 or 5 others, and, they never get back to you, and it's like, in the meantime, you've got to have it to get stuff done. And,
I understand. I'm just trying to look at how we can document something and not put more work on you, because we need to have that balance of not, making you go through a bunch of hoops, but we also need to document that we're actually trying to get a good price for these things. And I'm looking at these smaller amounts and trying to figure out how that balances in a way that works.
The other thing is that we've had audits done every year, and it's never been flagged.
Mm-hmm.
We use the guideline of the auditor to say, are we complying with, is this enough documentation? Is there any red flags here? And they do a pretty thorough audit, especially now since we moved to the complete audit. And there's been some suggestions of stuff like the TA accounts, where we can't hold the money anymore because we're not a money holder after a year. That's why you saw all those TA accounts go away. And having said that, we listen to the auditors and we basically go by their guidelines. This has never come up where this is a concern with this type of practice. So that would tell me that personally, if you have a voucher, that to me is a written quote. I would argue there's your written quote right there.
Well, so in a way we've had the past is like up to the $1,000. I mean, it kind of goes. I mean, maybe whether guys' aspect of it is, but most things like in the past talking like controller stuff or whatever as far as, so you take, AA battery, you know, it's a verbal quote for $9, say, great, it's a reasonable price. If one AA battery on the voucher is $93, somebody's gonna deem that's not, you know, a reasonable amount. So I think that's you know, it's kind of the checks and balance. I mean, if you know, I'm sending a voucher down every month and Charmaine's paying, you know, for something, you know, a box of rubber bands is $83, you know, this month. It's kind of like, you know, which I would hope we don't have people doing that, of course, but.
That's the Army.
Right.
But it's really not about finding the battery that is 50% less than the other battery in Marathon.
Right.
Right, no, I know that, because that wastes our time too.
I guess what I think, Joe, is it's not broken, why are we fixing it?
Because what I'm hearing at my training sessions is that we're responsible to see that this policy is being implemented.
Well, I heard it too at the training sessions, and I'm not gonna get an argument with you about it, but the point being is that we gotta trust our people too, and then that comes back with the vouchers we sign. You know, like today, I looked at the vouchers. We had $13, something like that, matched with the thing. It seemed a reasonable thing. It wasn't, you know, when we look at the $1 million adjustments, and we say, well, that makes sense because it's a water district or whatever. So, I mean, my point is, it's not broke. And can we make it better? Yeah. But at this point, is it worth spending the time to make it? I mean, to fix something that's not broke?
Would you like me to finish my answer?
No. I'm just kidding.
Because I'm trying to make it better. And what I'm hearing is we're really getting written quotes for those little things. It's that receipt that gets turned in with the voucher. And so maybe we could describe this more directly to what we're actually doing, which is we're getting you know, a written receipt saying this is how much it costs. It's going with the voucher. And you know, describe it a little bit more clearly as to exactly what we're doing, so that we can say we're following the policy. I can show exactly how it's happening. I'm getting this written thing. It says this is how much it costs. This is how much what we'd like to buy, and I've got it all sitting in front of me. And so I'm suggesting that maybe the procurement policy could be described just a little bit more clearly to exactly what we're doing, not putting more work on our staff, because I don't want to do that. I'm looking
But
at
it is putting more work on our staff.
Why?
Well, how are we describing it? We want the vendor to do it?
Well, that's what we're doing right now anyway. Where each one of these...
Right, the vendor's already giving it a description of a AAA battery.
I know, and if
Do we got to list what the AAA battery's for? I mean, then that goes back to I do this every day with what I do. You know, you rationalize some things and say, well, okay, this goes to this project. The money goes here. Why is it there? That's why, you know.
Right, and right now it's saying we're getting a verbal quote, and what we're actually getting is written quotes.
So do you want it to say that in the
That's what I'm
policy?
suggesting, is that we could change the policy to more describe exactly what we're doing.
So take the verbal out of it.
That's what I'm saying.
Cut it out.
Yeah.
Because it's not a verbal quote.
It's not a verbal quote.
Just cut it out.
Just cut
Or
it out.
That's it.
You
Boom,
can make
done.
it more flexible and just say a verbal or written quote.
Yeah.
We could just have $1,000 a reasonable expenditure.
Yes.
Because you're really, I mean, for all the items that are under $1,000, let's be honest, I mean,
It's
the reasonable expenditures.
$9.99.
What's that?
$9.99.
Yeah. But please understand, I mean, it's a reasonable expenditure, is why
Right.
the 1,000, and we raised it back here 2,000, I don't know, we looked at it, whatever it was. Because it used to be 500, and the reality is, for a lot of the shop things that we do on a daily
They're
business,
expensive.
that, you know, you're $560, you know, and it's like, okay, so now the folder this thick is now this thick with all the quotes in it, so. But yeah, so I mean, to me, I guess the $1,000 would be just a reasonable cost if reworded.
So we get rid of the verbal, or we have verbal and written?
And/or.
Well, if you put written in there, then you're asking me to get a written quote before I actually purchase it.
Or. Just put an or.
And/or.
Right.
And then when you turn in that receipt, we've got a written quote, and it's all documented, it's clearly stated, and, you know,
One written quote, and it's a receipt.
it's a receipt, which is a written quote.
Okay.
So that-
Right, it's just saying that the price that you signed for buying it,
It's a receipt.
you're acknowledging that that was the
Right.
quoted price.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I'm not trying to put more work on
No,
you.
no, gotcha. Gotcha, no, I see what you're saying.
A receipt is not a quote.
A receipt's not a quote.
A quote exists to verify that you're getting a fair, competitive price before you make a purchase. A receipt evidences a purchase. You're talking apples and oranges. And I can also point out that as far as Cricket's department, there's an organizational resolution that covers you. And it's been there every year, year after year, and it was there this year, Resolution 1810, resolved. That the highway superintendent be authorized to purchase equipment, tools, and implements not to exceed the amount of $2,500 without prior notice or approval. It's a specific exemption to the policy. So as far as your tools, you're probably okay depending upon the volume of tools. Now, obviously, I know what the cost is for ratchets for truck work, so
Right.
$2,500 is nothing if you break a couple of those things. So my concern, when I made a comment on this, my concern was that one of the biggest things that's been happening when people are going out there and trying to get quotes is that Ithaca's a small town. And I know on a couple things in the Parks Department, they kept struggling and struggling and struggling, and they could not get 3 quotes.
So
They
you
would
want to
contact people, they would, no, well, yeah, it's not my place to make the policy, but I know for, if you talk to all the departments,
Yeah,
they would go out there and they'd be making call after call after call, and these people just didn't want to take the time to bother writing it down, faxing it in, nothing. And there were projects where it was just like, well, did you make an honest effort to get as many quotes as you could, and the marketplace just doesn't have 3 vendors? Yes. Well, then what's your choice? It's either close the bathrooms at the park or buy the toilet paper. Get the toilet paper. So I've seen a lot of, this is pretty consistent with what a lot of towns have. Some have a number upon which you don't have to do anything, other than, you know, basically general employee oversight. Trust that your employees are doing the right thing. But as far as verbal and written quotes, those need to be obtained before the decision to purchase is made. So a verbal quote would be, let's say you needed a monitor. You could call Best Buy, you could call whoever, and whoever gave you the lowest price over the phone, that's the one you go get. But if you're buying an entire computer, obviously, if you're getting something that's at least modern, you're gonna need 3 quotes, or if you're gonna get the whole thing, hard drive, everything else with it, if you get a really good computer these days, you're gonna go over $2,500 and you're gonna need written quotes. And the written quotes can be anything. You can get them from online from Best Buy, you can go to, so I don't know where you want to set all the limits, but the idea of a procurement policy is to make sure that you're checking in beforehand. Yes, if the receipt is consistent with the oral quote that you got, then it's perfectly good documentation, but you'd still need the handwritten note.
So do we still need the quote to go to Agway to get a battery?
or can we just change it to give them dispensation for all these small things?
Or just a
Well,
statement, or just a statement the guy said added to this saying that if the receipt is consistent with the verbal quote, that's adequate documentation for, you know, because we're asking him to get a verbal quote on something under $1,000, which means, you know, go out and say, how much is that battery? It's $10, okay, I'll buy it. But, you know.
What, maybe going with your idea, what if you added a line that said something on the order of, if it's $100, you have the discretion to go ahead and spend it if it's within your budget and approved by the department head.
Thank you.
Something like that. Just sort of create another category that exempts small purchases. I don't know. I mean, you do have to have some oversight, and that's what department heads are for. But at a certain point, I don't think the procurement policies of the state of New York were put in place to govern the purchase of nail clippers.
I would like them not to be.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of all I'm saying, I mean, for 13 years that I've been involved in the purchasing process, I mean, it's worked fine. When we upped the limits here a few years back, what we needed to do to make it work, just because we were tying up too much time trying to, you know, get the smaller items that had just increased. You know, like I said, I mean, my department's unique to all that, just because obviously the vouchers come in, and obviously the major part of the stack is mine.
Yeah.
So, like I said, you know, we do the 2,500, but we do our best to follow that procurement procedure all along with everything too, so.
put another line in for under 100?
Well, I don't know, but I'm just, one of my concerns is with 3 or more written quotes for $2,500, that can take hours.
Yeah, I
So,
agree.
that was my suggestion, is you can't change the 20 and 35,000, but 3 written quotes, the numbers I usually see is 5,000, sometimes even
Okay.
10,000. So our numbers are pretty strict compared to a lot of them, but if you take it to an extreme, yeah, we probably should have an exemption level or have a 1, 2, 3, some kind of progressive. Because it's at $2,500, you need 3 written quotes, and I know that one of the problems that has come up over the past 20 years is you can't get them. So does that mean you can't do it? Well, no.
Change
That's-
it to 2.
Well, one of the prime examples you have is during the snow season when things break down and you're fixing the village trucks. And you're doing it at 6 o'clock at night. And you gotta get a part.
Right. Well, that's where, kind of, it's emergency purchase stuff too. So,
So,
I mean, personally myself, I think the policy works fine the way it is. I mean, thus far with the federal audits and stuff, we've been through things. We've never been questioned on, whatever. I think as long as we're following the procedure as far as where there should be 3 written quotes, there is 3 written quotes. Now, should we up that range there or whatever a little bit, that's a decision for you folks to make. But like I said, I mean, I personally feel like, I guess I'd reiterate a little bit like Doug says, is it's not, there's nothing really broke about it. And I understand we want to make sure we're doing the right documentation, and I think we have been doing a good job of that, so, the pleasure is your folks', but I mean, I'm confident that it works well. I think the talk of maybe the procurement was are we looking, do we need to increase the amounts a little bit to make things work with the inflation and stuff? So.
We're stuck by those other limits though.
Right, well, the upper pieces, absolutely, and I get that. But I think, just talking about the lower stuff, because that was what happened to us here several years back, is like the bottom number was 500. And it got to be the realization that, everyday business we were doing was, the mechanic spending 4 hours on the phone to do 2 hours worth of work, so.
But we've solved that with a $9.99.
Correct.
so are you suggesting leave it at that, or am I hearing that?
That wasn't, I don't think that's the issue. I think it's the issue of getting quotes at the $2,500 level.
Right, which I understand Joe's concern, just, what deems correct documentation, I guess, in the future if somebody questions.
Right, well, my question was more on the lower ones, and I like Guy's suggestion of simply saying a receipt is evidence that the verbal quote matched the receipt. So, to just say that's documentation. So we can't say the receipt is the verbal quote, but we can say that the receipt is adequate evidence that a verbal quote was obtained.
Well, why do we need a verbal quote?
Are you talking
Because it's
about,
required in the
are you
procurement
talking
policy.
about like a box of pens?
Why don't we get rid of that?
Well,
That's what I was just saying. Just
Yeah,
that's all I was
okay.
saying. If you
Get
state
rid
that
of-
bottom tier, just
get
have
rid
word
of
that
the
says
first X
a
and make
reasonable amount of money or something,
If you walk into a hardware store to get Zerk fitting for grease, whatever, you're gonna
Right,
say,
those call
okay.
signs. It should
Right.
be $25.
Right.
Right.
And you know that as the person going in there, you're making that decision and we trust you. So the verbal quote in that regard wouldn't be needed. So there is no verbal quote.
But
it's
it's
a
not
receipt.
just highway, it's everybody. So when I buy a box of pens.
Exactly.
You're required to get a verbal quote first, and then you can purchase it by a procurement policy.
So we get rid of that.
So we get rid of the
under
verbal quote.
under a certain number, we don't
$9.99.
require any verbal quote. We trust your judgment.
That would be nice.
Wouldn't that be nice?
This is all good
So you
conversation.
add another line.
No, just delete. Verbal under thousand.
Like I said, I think up to the $9.99 is a reasonable expenditure.
Okay.
Based on
Verbal quote under, and then where are you going verbal quote beyond that? You're
Yeah,
not,
the
you're
next
getting a
day.
regular quote.
Well, no, you've got the 3 verbal quotes for things, it depends on whether you're in a public works or in the rest of the thing.
Right, but
There's
that
got 2 different
verbal,
numbers here, which I'm wondering if they could be combined because, figuring out what a public works project is versus a non-public works. is kind of.
That's a threshold though of money.
No, but we don't have to have a separate interim threshold for those. And we've got the 20 and 35,000, but we don't have to say, you're buying this for a public works project for $5,000. We're gonna have a different threshold for that than we do for a non-public works project. I think that just, creates people having to think too hard. It doesn't really matter that much. We got two different.
$25,000, period.
No, a public works project exists if you spend a penny and it qualifies as a public work. 35,000 is the threshold at which you must go to competitive bidding, and in Tompkins County, 500,000 is the threshold at which you must segregate the work under the Wicks law. So if you were to do a capital improvement, and it only cost you $10, it would still be a prevailing wage public works project.
Yikes.
Taking them in.
There's no limit to the public works. What is a public work? This is when it has to go through. This is how you verify that you got the best. You made a reasonable effort to ascertain the lowest price prior to expending the public money.
Right, and we're making a separate category for if you spend between $1,000 and $4,000 for public works and $1,000 and $2,500 for everything else. And I'm saying we can make those numbers the same. We don't need to have a separate threshold, internal threshold for those.
It's up to you.
It makes it less thought for staff to have to decide this is a public work, therefore it hits this threshold versus that threshold. And I don't know why it makes a difference on these things that are under $20,000 anyway. I mean, maybe there's a reason to have them different for the under 20,000, but I think for our purposes it could be the same.
Can we do a summation through emails? We bounce this back and forth so we can move on to other subjects, because unless there's other stuff you want to massage tonight on this procurement policy, because these are all good points.
I think we have some agreement of getting rid of that one verbal quote for under 999, right?
Yeah, I think.
Get rid of the verbal quote requirement and maybe drop the next one to 2 or more, not 3 or more.
Right. Well, I don't have to because, I mean, in our aspect, what we do is, if you can't get that third one, we document it with,
And I think
with
you
the
do
voucher.
have people.
You know, call whatever place, the phone number and stuff on there, and, you know, that's always been acceptable back through the state, you know, so, I mean, that's, you know, there again, with my networking of all, you know, I mean, I have a lot of these conversations with different superintendents and stuff, because, you know, you get stuck on this one thing, so you find yourself calling other people like, hey, do you know anybody that does? No, this is what we ended up doing, that, you know, so, I mean, it's.
I understand that the documentation, if I called this place and couldn't get a quote, is effectively a quote and we won't sell it to you.
Right, so then typically that's what you'll find. I mean, in there again, with the 3 written quotes, I mean, a voucher's turned in, for 3 verbal quotes, so to speak, on something. The voucher's turned in, generally there's noted on with the voucher, you know, there'll be a handwritten receipt with who got called and what their price was. So I mean, we're, you know, not necessarily, but typically myself, if I'm calling for 3 verbal quotes, just fax me something over. You know what I mean?
So can we make those modifications and then vote on them?
I like that idea, honestly. I think if you were all willing, let's just make sure we put it in place right, so moving forward, we don't have this discussion for another 4 or 5 years perhaps. You know, like I said, I think there's good points there.
Yeah.
I'd rather see everybody take a little time in the aspect of like what I do, and just let's make sure we kind of get it right and not just try to, you know, like I said, I agree with Doug, it's not broke, it's working. I think we can tweak a couple things, but let's, maybe if you folks over a month or so kind of had a little chitter chatter back over email, just, you know, and there again, it gives me an opportunity to look at it too, and I can throw some input back to you also.
Okay.
As to what, you know, and, you know, just kind of look into some of the things I've done in the past and say, yeah, this might make sense.
What would make more sense for you?
Yep, so I would appreciate that.
Good.
That'd be great.
Okay, having said that, we'll move on to the cash management and investment policy. Anybody want to lead off?
I was in impressed on the day it was adopted, 1990, wow.
That Jean Kirby, she's something else, huh?
Yeah, I was looking at that.
Was yours rolled up like mine was? Like a scroll or not? Well, once again, as we clean stuff up, some of it might be broke, some of it not.
Well, it says it's about cash management, but it doesn't really describe cash management. It mostly describes investment.
Investments, yeah.
It doesn't talk about how we handle cash, how checks and cash move from being handed to the town clerk through the system into the bank. It's not described here at all, yet it says that's what it does. And so I think for starters, we should just call it an investment policy, because that's all it is.
There you go.
Which means we don't have a cash management policy.
Right, next. Okay. Outstanding, making great progress. Well, would you bring up a good point, because you have this pot of money. And if you look over your fund balance policy, it says we will keep a minimum of 25% of the operating expenses, but we will keep 50% of the fund balance. Do I want to visit that again? Yes. But we made baby steps, which was we got something in place. And now that we implement it, okay, you have 25% of your operating expenses, but now you have 50% of your fund balance, which is a cash management policy. So now you got this pot of money here. Okay, what are you going to do with that money that you've overtaxed, personal opinion, overtaxed the taxpayers with? Okay, do you put that in a reserve? Do you put it for other stuff? Do you put some of that into, oh, look at this, cold storage building, which is on there, okay, or other stuff? And this is something that I'd like to talk about at the March meeting, because the AUD was just done, okay, the annual updated document. And it tells all about budgets, all our stuff, and we can get you a copy, okay?
I would like to see it.
I thought you would. And it goes through the whole procedure of all where the allocations are. We've also done a 5-year spreadsheet with the totals on there for everyone. It's in your boxes if you haven't got it already. It should
This
be.
is going backwards.
No,
Yeah.
this is
No, we
going
saw
from
it.
217 now. It's updated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying it's 5 years going backwards.
Right, but it also gives you what the total amounts are, so you can look at, okay, if we're doing a 3-month operating expense and here's the number, you take 25% of that, that's the number we need to have in our operating expenses for our pot of money.
My question about this is, why are some of these numbers yellow? Some of them are in yellow.
Probably I'll show them tomorrow without going over it.
Significant changes
I thought
between.
that.
Yeah, those are the highlights of like budget mods maybe.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
Okay.
The one I
We'll have an answer for you tomorrow.
Okay.
But the main thing is to get a grasp as far as, okay, we have operating expenses that we want to catch here, okay? So we have the winter from H, which is winter of 94, okay? We had 12 storms. And what it cost you in, what, 30, we burned through a lot of money just in, right? So having said all that, this all gets wrapped in together with your investment policy and everything else, because maybe you don't have the money to invest.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to tie this up for X amount. Okay? So these are things that we can discuss as we move forward. Do you want to discuss the investment policy now? We don't know how much money we want to invest. Or do you want to invest any money? Just saying, which is first, the chicken or the egg here? You know, in the past, we've left the pot of money just in one big loan. Now we've moved it over to at least allocate so much to those. And even with the allocation of money, we still have money left over. What do you do with that money? Is the comptroller going to say, hey, that extra money, what are we going to do with that?
Well, yeah, we got a lot of money in December that's going to be spent over the course of the year. And, can we make a little bit of interest on some of it for short-term CDs and stuff? I mean, that's the kind of question that we need to be asking and figuring out. Not to run the town short, because I know we need to have operating money, but when you get a whole bunch at the beginning, can we, get a 90-day CD, get a little bit of interest, and, take a slight burden off the taxpayers without putting too much work on our staff?
So as we take this in pieces, because you can't do it all at once, the first thing we need is personal opinion again. Look at what your fund balance, 25% of that is. Okay? Or excuse me, what your operating expenses are, your 25%. That's what you want at least, right, comptroller? Yeah. Then you look at your fund balance and say, okay, for us to keep that same amount of money, what's left over? from what's left over, what do we need to allocate now in case we have that really bad winter? We got to get hold of that money from DA fund or from the A fund, because you can slide them back and forth. And, okay, to get through that, what amount will be left over from that you feel comfortable allocating for, this is where you'll come in, I hope. What's the amount we need to minimally invest, and what is the minimum amount of years we have to lock it in? And I hope you would research that and get back to us with the information. And then we can say, okay, Joe, we need to say for $250,000, we can, okay, can we part with $250,000? These are the questions we'll have to ask ourselves.
Well, I think the other thing I need to see is what's our spending pattern through the year, because it's not necessarily a straight line, and I don't know that.
Well,
through the year, how much do we spend in January? How much do we spend in February? How much to just get an idea of where are our big expenses and where are so I can get an idea of where our pinch points are.
Well, I mean, let's face it. In the A funds, you get front loaded. How much? 13 million and something?
Yeah. That's
right, you get front loaded. This
No,
point we've
no,
asked.
a lot of that doesn't, we don't get that. A lot of that.
That goes to the county.
You get about 3.5.
Thank you. So that 3.5, this is one of the reasons why we asked Cricket and everybody else in this. We've asked Cricket and everybody else at the town hall to see if there's a discount for prepaying, because we already got our money up front. But having said that, these pinch points every month, you'd have to go through the supervisor's report of every month and do that. But if you have your pot of money here, personally, you look at where you start, where you ended, and whatever is left over that your comfort level is, that is the amount you probably had that discussion.
Right. So you're saying, did you say 3 or 6 million? I forgot what you said.
3.5 million.
3.5 million right now. We're not going to spend that in the next 90 days.
We don't know.
Probably.
No, probably not.
Right. And so I'm thinking, can we take half of it, a third of it, put it in a 90-day CD, get interest off of it for the town, and then continue. And we're not tying up the money for a long period of time. We're just tying it up for long enough to get a little bit of interest. And when you're talking $1 million, $1.5 million, that little bit of interest is something, even if it's 1%, 1.5%.
So let me do this. Let me give you that data first. That data where you say, okay, this is the amount you have left over from your 3 months of operating expenses. This is the amount of money you have left over in your fund balance after that. That difference. Let me give you those numbers first. Okay. Because those numbers aren't going to be allocated to anything. Okay? Yeah. Above. Okay, above our operating expenses, this is what we have back in our fund balance, okay? And let's go from there, and then from there we can have that discussion as we...
Right, I mean, and maybe just the thing we do in January, in which we take a big chunk of that, invest it for a short time, and then, continue through the year. But if we can get, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 out of that makes a difference.
I'm all on board. I'm all on board. The fact of the matter, your discussion won't be probably until February or March, because as you saw in the budget mods tonight, a couple of those were from 2017 we had to pay. So you're finally closing the books, and eventually, because the AUD is not due till the end of March, that's when you really, quote unquote, close the books. So you can have that discussion in January, but you're projecting, but I think we'll have a big enough pot of money that we can safely make an estimate.
Yeah.
Okay? So we're all in a comfort zone for that as we talk back and forth. We can move on. Unless people want to continue, which is fine.
Why don't we give it back to the people to make investments?
Because we're going to need it in the last half of the year.
Yeah.
Well, here's a couple of things that you want to look at.
Do that.
First of all is that we talked about having a needs assessment done for the highway department. And what the goal is to have Gary Bush give us that contractor to look over, hopefully before our March meeting, that we can discuss it. If we like it, we'll approve of it. I think it's like $3,900.
Yep.
To do the need assessment, because, if you have $500,000 already, I would hate to give it back and then take it back again. You know what I'm saying? Especially when we're at $1.49. Personal opinion, we're going to lose $10 million in assessed value this year from the power plant. We'll lose another $5 million next year. That's what the pilot does. So let's see what it all plays out. But I really have that pot of money there, and we say, okay, maybe we move an extra over here. We do our due diligence ahead of time. And God forbid we should actually save enough to do most of it. And the comptroller could say, shame on you. And I say, yeah, shame on me. Go ahead. Shame me all you want. Meanwhile, we're methodically doing this.
Well, that's why I'd like to start to talk about doing 5-year projected budgets, so we can start saying, all right, we're going to lose $10 million now, we're going to lose $5 million. What's going to happen, so we know what our curve's like, and can really start planning that way.
believe it or not, that's on the plan, but the first thing we had to do is get the fund balance policy done first.
Yes.
And do the rest of it. So that discussion has been made, and you're on board, which I appreciate. That is like step 3, but we gotta do step 1 and 2 first. So yes, I totally agree with you.
You said we need to get a fund balance policy.
No, we had to. We had to get that done first because, okay, how much do we have here? I don't know. What's a 5-year plan? I don't know. How much do we have? So these are all questions that we answer methodically. And then I think we're at the point now, which is good. We have these discussions now. We're at that point now to have that serious discussion of a 5-year plan. This is what we do right now. We've done it with the highway department with their equipment, which we'll talk about later also.
I just heard a little bit from Cricket, and I think it's really well done.
But I'm using this as a segue, Crick. I'm doing the best I can tonight, But these are things that we went through with the machines. And 3 of those trucks were bought in 1 year. That's $650,000. Looking at you. And one of the things that was proposed is to get a single axle dump truck, which is $180,000. Okay? Cricket thinks he can get 60 for the old one. What that does is it pulls that off, and I don't know it's not in the budget this year, but it pulls that off because we're looking at 3 in 1 year. And it takes the steam out of it this year. We have enough money between, he thinks about 20% should come out of the water district, 20 should come out of the A fund, and 40% out of the A fund, 40% out of the B fund, because he's going to share it. When they do water lines, that single axle gets there, it's a smaller truck. Where I took the tour on Monday, there was a smaller truck, which means they do Sperry Lane, Lakeview, they do Ludlow. They can get smaller in the areas than you can those big trucks. Single axle means you got 6 wheels instead of 10 wheels. Single axle also means when we bought that box the other year, he's going to put that on an older truck, stretch that from a 14-year to a 16-year truck. I know it's 7, 9, 6, and whatever number else you had, right? We're going through this. But we're trying to stretch these out so that we're not hit with 3 trucks in 1 year, because last thing you want to do is have things break down when you get 6 inches of snow. But I'll use that as a plant that seed now so that we'll think about that in our discussion. But we have enough money, I believe, to do that, because even though we've had a lot of expenses this year with the roof and everything else, we still are very solid. Okay? But all that information will be in an email so you can digest it a bit at a time. There's 2 more things. First of all is the website, since Chris is here, and had that committee forum. We talked about that with you also, with your input.
Yes.
And one of the things that was recommended is that with Chris is that you come up with an idea of the web changes, how you make it more accessible, because I think one of the things that we found out was that we're having a hard time getting to the web. Not that the information's not there, we just can't find it. So your input would be critical, so would Chris's, so who else do you want on that committee? I don't care. Whoever that do these things so we can do it. And then what we would do with those recommendations, we would send them over to Dan, and then he would put them on the web. He's on board with this, so you work as a team and do that, okay? So this is all volunteer. We would pay for that when he's ready, but he wouldn't be in the whole process, so we're not running up the bill. So you have some great ideas with those checklists. I love them. You go through and you pick out whichever ones you want to have people send it. I look forward to that. So that's another thing that you and Chris can get together and build your own committee, and then go with some ideas and go from there, okay?
I like that.
Last thing is I don't think we need to go to executive session. I'm trying to get out of here early. It's been a great meeting. How am I doing? I know you're 15 minutes late. Hang on, bud. The cold storage building.
You guys just love to talk.
The cold storage building is that, once again, background. Last year we allocated $60,000 for this. We got 1 bid. Once again, 1 bid, we had to do best practices, okay? And it wasn't 3 bids, but we did the same thing where we had to look at what we're going to do. He came in at $80,000. We said no thank you.
I'm aware of all this.
Okay, so I just want to make this, this is for the record, right? So having said that, we revisited this, and what we're looking at is that when the Emotions building, which was up there, left, they gave that to the town. And what that has in it is it has water, it has electric, it has everything, great to work on stuff inside, it's all heated. They want to do a cold storage building, a 40 by 60 building next to it. It would have a gravel. We talked about the electric minimal for safety. It would not have a concrete floor in the future. I don't see that happening. I don't see it being winterized. It's simply cold storage. And to give you some background, when the rec department first started up at the highway department, they had a gravel floor before they came down here, before they built this building. So what we're looking at there is RC gets the 3 bids. And we're looking at an allocation from the town for $45,000. Then that 45,000 should cover everything. Cricket says he'll use about 25% of the time. It gets our machinery out of the area where they're stored now in that old rickety building, which we don't think we can salvage. That would be knocked down. Cricket would then take all his pipes and culverts and stuff, put them over there as a storage area, put a gate on it so that they don't walk away, and that way it'll be a centralized area. Okay? Those are things for our proposal, and once again, I'm just planting seeds tonight. You know, and if you want to have more, I know you've had great discussions with them, and I appreciate that you're doing all the legwork.
And I'd actually like to come out and see all this, because it's one thing to hear about it, it's another thing. I know you invited me, and I haven't had a chance yet.
Oh, yeah, well, no, that's.
When you have a moment, when you're in town, okay? When you're in town, see if you can do it.
Yeah, I'd like to see it, because, you know, just to take all these verbal things and turn it into something that I can visualize.
I didn't realize that a single axle is smaller than a double axle.
That I can visualize. It's, you know, you're talking about this is going to be the yard, here's where you're going to, you know, fence it off, here's where we're going to put the building. I need to see this, not because I need to, but just because seeing it makes a difference and just understanding.
No, this is the intro tonight. This is the appetizer.
And I've already got the invite to come look at it, I just haven't had time.
Well, according to him, you had some great questions.
Mm-hmm.
And you seem to be at a good comfort level. So, you know, we've all been through this, so once again, I'll take as much time as possible to keep everybody up, because I want this to be 5-0. I don't want to have 3-2, then drive a 3-2 this way.
I'm with you.
You know what I'm saying? I'd rather get 80% something than 100% nothing.
And by the end of March, I'll come out and visit you.
Well, the weather hasn't been real conducive for anybody.
It was today.
Right.
Of all days, right?
And I was driving back through it was 80 degrees when I left New York City.
I bet.
Well, thank goodness it wasn't tomorrow. So on that note, does anybody have any other questions? Otherwise, Doug would like to move to adjourn.
I would just like to say one thing. My understanding is that the Garden Rotary Club project is going to be going before the planning board and this town board, and I would just like to see if we can get a joint visit of the site and discussion of what we're talking about. I've been out there a little bit, but I think if both the town board and the planning board.
That sounds great.
It's on my plans too, because they say, well, we'll do a curtain. What does that mean? We'll do this. What are we talking about? Once again.
And where is it?
Where is it? And what do you propose? And I'm totally in agreement with you.
Mm-hmm.
Totally in agreement with you. Okay, what are you guys proposing to do? If this is the way to mitigate it, my whole thing is that convince me.
Well, right now, I want to go see your project. I want to see this project. It's a huge project. It's important. It's controversial in the community. I want to walk around the land and say, all right, here's what we're doing now, here's what we're proposing to change, and actually see it on site. And we might as well do it with the planning board, because they're going to have to deal with it too. And just, you know, let's all go and look at it.
Do it as an option. I'd like to see them show me the options.
Yeah.
What are your recommendations here?
And let's do it early so that we get everybody talking about it.
No, I'm not a member, but I've been there quite a bit.
I've been on the site down with lodges and stuff, but I think they're putting part of it across the stream and up the hill, and I haven't been on that site at all.
No. They actually have some stuff up there now, I believe.
They've got something on that
Turkey
side,
shoot or something.
but I'm not sure where they're proposing it. I'd like to just stand there and them say,
Yeah, I don't know either.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Let's set up a couple of dates and have all of us go out and look at it early in the process. Okay. Cool.
Did you make a motion to adjourn?
I did.
No, Doug, you seconded, didn't you?
Yeah, we don't need all that, we just need adjourns the meeting at a certain time.
We're adjourned. But you wanted to say 2 more things.
No.